In the humid, malaria-soaked jungles of New Guinea in 1943, there was a sound that haunted every American pilot. The rhythmic, high-pitched hum of a Mitsubishi A6M0. For the men of the 5th Air Force, that sound wasn't just an engine, it was a death knell. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was supposed to be the silver bullet of the Pacific. It was a twin-engine monster, a marvel of Art Deco engineering that could outrun almost anything in the sky. But by mid-August, the P-38s were falling out of the sky at an alarming rate. They weren't being outrun. They were being outdanced. American pilots were following the rules. They were flying the doctrine. And the doctrine was getting them killed. But on the night of August 16th, a 23-year-old mechanic named Technical Sergeant James McKenna decided that if the Army Air Force regulations were going to kill his friends, he was going to break the regulations. Armed with nothing but a pair of pliers and a 6-inch piece of stolen piano wire, McKenna performed an act of maintenance sabotage that would change the course of the air war in the Pacific. This is the story of the 3/8 of an inch that sat between life and death. To understand the stakes, you have to understand WWII Airfield. It wasn't a pristine base, it was a strip of crushed coral and mud carved out of the New Guinea jungle. The air was so thick with humidity you could wear it. The smell was a permanent cocktail of rotting vegetation, aviation fuel, and the metallic tang of dried blood. James McKenna had been there for 8 months. As a crew chief, his job wasn't just to fix planes. He was the caretaker of souls. Every morning, he watched young men, kids, really, climb into the cockpits of P-38s. He'd hand them their flight maps, pat the fuselage, and watch them disappear into the morning haze. Lately, too many of those cockpits were coming back empty. The P-38 was an absolute beast. It had 2 Allison V1710 engines. It had a concentrated battery of 4.50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon right in the nose. No synchronization gear needed. If you caught a zero in those sights, the zero disintegrated. But the zero was a ghost. It weighed half as much as the Lightning. It had a turning radius so tight it felt like it could turn inside a telephone booth. The problem wasn't the speed. It wasn't the guns. It was something hidden deep inside the twin booms of the aircraft. Something McKenna felt every time he performed a maintenance check. Lockheed's engineers in California were geniuses, but they were designing for ideal conditions. In the labs at Burbank, the P-38's control system was a masterpiece of cable and pulley design. The cables that controlled the ailerons, the flaps that allow a plane to roll, ran from the cockpit all the way back through the long twin booms, through a series of pulleys, and then back out to the wings. It was a long run. Over 30 feet of steel cable. McKenna had noticed it during his very first week. When he moved the control stick in the cockpit, there was a tiny, almost imperceptible delay before the ailerons on the wings moved. He measured it. It was about 3/8 of an inch of slack or play in the cable. In straight and level flight, it didn't matter. But in the life and death struggle of a dogfight, physics becomes a cruel master. When an American pilot like Robert Hayes needed to roll the plane to escape a zero, he would shove the stick hard to the side. For a fraction of a second, maybe half a heartbeat, the cable would simply tighten across that 3/8 of an inch gap. During that half heartbeat, the plane did nothing. To the pilot, it felt mushy. It felt like the plane was moving through mud. Because of this mushiness, the Army Air Force developed a doctrine. Do not turn with the zero. Hit and run, the instructors screamed. Dive from altitude, fire a burst, and use your twin-engine power to climb away. Never, under any circumstances, try to outmaneuver a Japanese fighter. But McKenna saw the flaw in the doctrine. The Japanese pilots weren't stupid. They knew the P-38 was sluggish in a roll. They would bait the Americans. They would wait for the P-38 to dive, then they would snap roll into a turn. If the American tried to follow, the P-38 would lag just long enough for the zero to reverse and get on the P-38's tail. Once a zero was on your tail, the P-38 size became its own enemy. It was a massive target. McKenna kept a mental ledger of the men he'd lost to this 3/8 of an inch. There was Lieutenant David Chen, a car nut from Sacramento. He and McKenna used to talk about overhead valves and fuel ratios. Chen was a brilliant pilot, but he came back from a mission on July 9th looking like he'd seen a ghost. I had him, James, Chen had whispered. I had the lead. I rolled to follow his brake, and the plane, it just didn't go. It sat there for a second. By the time the wings bit the air, he was behind me. Chen died 3 weeks later over WWII. The official report said, pilot error. McKenna knew it was cable error. Then there was Captain William Morrison, a flight leader. A man who knew the P-38 better than he knew his own wife. On August 3rd, the radio at WWII with Morrison's voice, I can't get it over. She's too heavy. I can't. Then silence. Morrison's wingmen watched him try to roll inverted to dive away, but the plane responded so slowly that the Zeros simply walked their tracers across his cockpit. McKenna went to the engineering officer. He explained the slack. He explained that the cables needed more tension. The officer, a man who followed the manual like it was the Bible, shut him down. The tension is within Lockheed's factory specifications, Sergeant. You tighten those cables, you risk snapping them under high G loads. You modify that flight system, and I'll have your stripes. You are a mechanic, not an engineer. By August 16th, the 5th Air Force had lost 37 Lightnings in 6 weeks. The morale at the airfield was at a breaking point. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, a 23-year-old farm boy from Iowa, came to McKenna's tent that evening. Hayes had 0 kills in 6 missions. He was terrified, not of dying, but of failing his wingmen because his plane wouldn't move. Is there anything you can do, James? Anything at all? McKenna looked at the kid. He saw the same look he'd seen in Chen's eyes. He knew if Hayes flew the next morning with factory spec cables, Hayes wasn't coming home. McKenna waited until 2300 hours. The airfield was a symphony of jungle insects and distant generators. He walked to Hayes's P-38, tail number 174. In his pocket, he had a piece of high-tensile piano wire he'd scavenged from the rudder trim of a crashed P-38. It was stiff, unforgiving steel. He sat on the oily floor of the hangar and used a pair of heavy-duty pliers to bend the wire into a precise Z shape. He opened the inspection panel on the left boom. The metal was still warm. He worked by the dim, filtered light of a shielded flashlight. He disconnected the aileron cable at the main pulley junction. His heart was hammering against his ribs. If the MPs walked in now, it was the brig. If he messed this up and the cable snapped in flight, he was a murderer. He inserted the Z-shaped wire as an inline tensioner. It was a simple spring gap fix. It added exactly 0.4 pounds of tension. He reconnected the cable and pulled it with his hand. The twang was different. The slack was gone. He moved to the other boom and repeated the process. Total time, 8 minutes. He wiped his blood, where the wire had sliced his thumb, off the cable. He closed the panels. He told no one. August 17th, 8:14 a.m., 13,000 feet. Robert Hayes was flying the number 3 position. Below them, 9 Mitsubishi Zeros were cruising, unsuspecting. The sun was at the Americans' backs. Bounce M, the flight leader called. Hayes tipped his P-38 into a dive. The air screamed over the canopy. 400 miles per hour. He picked his target, a Zero with a bright red spinner. As Hayes closed in, the Zero pilot spotted him. The Japanese pilot did exactly what they always did. He waited until the last possible second and then threw his plane into a violent, high-G right-hand snap roll. Usually, this was where the P-38 would fail. The American pilot would move his stick, the cable would slack, and the Zero would vanish from the sights. Hayes shoved the stick right. In his debriefing, Hayes said it felt like a lightning bolt hit the plane. The P-38 didn't just roll, it snapped. The wings bit into the air instantly. There was no lag, no mushiness. The Zero was right there. Hayes squeezed the trigger. The 20mm cannon shells tore through the Zero's fuel tanks. The Japanese fighter turned into a magnesium flare. One down, Hayes yelled. But the battle wasn't over. 2 more Zeros, seeing their comrade fall, reversed and came at Hayes from his 6. According to doctrine, Hayes should have dived and run, but Hayes felt the power in his hands. He rolled hard left, then immediately reversed to the right. The Zeros were confused. They had fought hundreds of P-38s. They knew the P-38's rhythm. They knew the delay. They had timed their turns to exploit that half-second gap. But Hayes was off-beat. He was moving faster than the math allowed. He got inside the turning radius of the lead Zero. A P-38 should not be able to out-turn a Zero, but by eliminating the control delay, Hayes was able to micro-adjust his turn. He walked his tracers across the Zero's wing route. The wing folded like wet cardboard. 2 kills. A third Zero tried to scissor with him. Hayes stayed with him, turn for turn, snap for snap. He was flying a different airplane. By the time the engagement ended, Hayes had 3 confirmed kills. He had gone from 0 kills to an ace in waiting in 17 minutes. When Hayes landed, he didn't go to the debriefing room first. He walked straight to McKenna. He didn't say thank you. He just grabbed McKenna's grease-stained hand and squeezed it until it hurt. It worked, Hayes. But you can't keep a secret like that at a fighter base. Captain Frank Mitchell, a flight leader, had seen Hayes's maneuvers from 2,000 feet above. He'd seen a P-38 doing things a P-38 wasn't supposed to do. Mitchell cornered McKenna. "I don't care about regulations," Mitchell said. "I lost 2 guys yesterday. Fix my plane." Within 48 hours, McKenna was a ghost mechanic. He was going from plane to plane at 1 a.m. He was teaching other crew chiefs, guys like Rodriguez and Watkins, how to bend the wire, how to find that Z shape. They called it the McKenna tensioner. It was a total violation of the Articles of War. It was unauthorized modification of frontline combat equipment. If a wing had fallen off, these men would have gone to Leavenworth. But the wings weren't falling off. The Zeros were. In late August 1943, the 11th Air Fleet of the Imperial Japanese Navy began filing frantic reports. The legendary Saburo Sakai, a man who had survived over 60 dogfights, noted a terrifying shift. He wrote that the American pilots had found a way to sharpen their claws. The Japanese tactics relied on the gap. They relied on the fact that an American pilot was always half a second behind the music. Now, the Americans were leading the dance. The psychological toll was massive. Japanese pilots who used to be aggressive became hesitant. If you can't predict your enemy's movement, you can't fight them. By the end of September, the air superiority in New Guinea had shifted decisively. The P-38 was no longer a clumsy beast. It was a twin-tailed devil. In October, the spec finally caught up with the reality. A senior maintenance inspector from the States arrived at WWII. He was a clipboard and stopwatch man. During a routine inspection of a P-38 from the 49th Fighter Group, he found it. The Z-bend piano wire. He went ballistic. He called it mechanical sabotage. He ordered a fleet-wide inspection. They found the wire in 40 different aircraft. McKenna was called into the commander's office. He was facing the end of his career, and possibly his freedom. But then, something unexpected happened. Captain Mitchell and Lieutenant Hayes stood outside the office. Then, every pilot in the squadron who was on the base stood there with them. They told the inspector, "If you court-martial McKenna, you have to court-martial us too. Because we ordered the change. And we're the ones who are still alive because of it." The inspector looked at the kill boards. He saw the numbers. July, 2 losses for every 1 kill. September, 1 loss for every 2 kills. The math was undeniable. Lockheed was contacted. They didn't sue. They didn't complain. They sent an engineering team. They looked at the wire, they ran the stress tests, and they realized that uneducated mechanic from Long Beach had found a resonance and slack issue that their $1 million slide rules had missed. When the P-38J model rolled off the assembly line in late 1943, it had a new feature, a factory-installed aileron boost and tensioning system. It was, in essence, a professional version of McKenna's piano wire. James McKenna never got a medal for it. He didn't want one. He stayed in the jungle. He kept fixing planes. He kept his head down. When the war ended, he went back to California and opened a small garage. He spent 40 years fixing the engines of station wagons and Ford trucks. His customers knew him as a quiet man who was good with his hands. They had no idea that the man changing their oil had saved the lives of 100 pilots by breaking the law. Robert Hayes stayed in touch with him for the rest of his life. Every August 17th, Hayes would call the garage. "Hey James," Hayes would say. "Just calling to say I'm still here." McKenna died in 2006. He was buried with full military honors, but his obituary was simple: James McKenna, mechanic. History is often told as a story of generals and presidents. But wars are won in the 3/8 of an inch. They are won by the men who see a problem, grab a pair of pliers, and refuse to let the rules get in the way of the truth. James McKenna didn't have an engineering degree, but he had something better. He had the courage to be right when the manual was wrong. Next time you see a P-38 Lightning in a museum, don't just look at the guns. Look at the booms. And remember the 6-inch piece of wire that turned a mushy airplane into the terror of the Pacific. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the untold history of the P-38, hit the like button. It helps us keep these stories alive. Subscribe for more minute-by-minute accounts of the innovators who changed history from the shadows. Thank you for watching. And James. Thanks for the wire.